FM 89.3.
Welcome to GE Tonight on Money FM 89.3. I'm Audrey Seek. Thanks for joining us as we take you through the ins and outs of GE 2025, here with you every evening until after polling day. It's day 4 of campaigning, and we are just a week away from heading to the polls. Lots to unpack today, starting with news on the ground. It's a busy night on the campaign front. 9 rallies this Saturday night, starting now at 7 p.m. till 10 p.m. And tonight, we'll be focusing on the changing faces of politics, this election's political renewal, and fresh faces to watch. We're seeing one of the biggest overhauls in Singapore's political history, the ruling PAP fielding 32 new candidates this GE, plus a significant wave of retirements reshaping the PAP lineup. 20 veterans, including some big names, have stepped down from politics, and the opposition is also shaking things up with the Workers' Party introducing 14 new candidates, some of them getting a lot of excitement, with a veteran also coming out of retirement. So what does this mix of renewal mean for voters? Who are the star new catches, and what might it signal about where this election is headed? We have 2 guests on tonight. Elvin Ong, Assistant Professor of Political Science at the National University of Singapore. Great to have you here, Elvin.
Thank you for having me.
It's really great to have you. And we welcome back Nicholas Fang, Managing Director of Strategic Consultancy Black Dot and a former NMP. Nick, welcome back to the show.
Hello. Thanks for having us. I can't believe you say it's just a week to go. Alvin just came back from overseas yesterday, but I think a lot of us are feeling like, wow, are we still have a week to go with all the content and all the stuff that we're seeing out there.
That's right. Hard to believe that it's only day 4. We do have about a week. We do have cooling days, so maybe we'll have a little bit of a break to absorb everything. But you're right. It's content all around. So, gentlemen, we're seeing a pretty big refresh, right? We've seen 20 PAP MPs retire. Among those stepping down are some big wigs, SM Teo Chee Hian, DPM Heng Swee Kiat. Also worth noting, Ng Eng Hen, Maliki Osman, some really familiar names here. So how significant would you say is their absence from the party slate this year? I'll start with you, Nicholas.
I think for sure their absence, their experience, their wisdom will be missed. But if you look at where we are in this election and the fact that we've spoken about it quite often in the build-up, but I think we tend to lose sight as well, is that this will be the 4G elections coming out party, basically. You have PM Lawrence Wong leading the elections for the first time, maybe not as PM, but as Secretary General of the PAP. He has to, and he has said that he's bringing in a team that will not necessarily become the leaders of this current government, but potentially building up in the next few election cycles, because they need time to grow, they need time to get familiar with the system and then grow into those positions. So, the manifesto tagline for the PAP had the refreshed team in it, and I think that that's a key part of what he's saying. He's already said, as far back as last year, that he's going to renew, he's going to refresh.
Yeah.
And I think that we're seeing a lot of that for sure. So, of course, when you bring in new blood, there has to be room made, and so we're seeing the stepping down of some of really experienced hands. You mentioned Defence Minister Ng Eng Hen, longest-serving Defence Minister, Deputy Prime Minister Heng Swee Kiat, and a host of other some of the backbenchers are very experienced backbenchers who have been contributing and on the ground as well. So I think the new batch has some big shoes to fill.
Yeah.
We do of course see some stalwarts still in the team. Minister Shanmugam, for example, one guy leading a team of 4 rookies. I think that speaks a lot to the confidence that Prime Minister Lawrence Wong has in him, and also his experience on the ground. But I think it's a definitely exciting time.
Yeah, so this one's to you, Elvin. We've seen candidates get out of politics. We mentioned 32 new faces for the PAP, and Lawrence Wong has addressed this refresh, and we want to take a soundbite from that.
This will be my first general election as Prime Minister and Secretary General of the PAP, and also the first with a refreshed PAP team. I hope Singaporeans will give me and my team the chance to do our best for you. we will give our all to serve you and to secure a brighter future for every Singaporean.
So, Elvin, do you think that Lawrence Wong gave himself this really big mountain to climb, refreshing as much as he has?
Well, I don't necessarily think it's a really big mountain to climb. If one of the PAP's taglines is to have a refreshed team, that signal must be matched by the actions, right? And so having these particular ministers step down, I think is a pretty strong signal that he wants to have this refreshed team. He wants to promote certain 4G leaders to take full cabinet ministerial positions, and I think it's a very good choice. And I think don't forget that we are going to have also this about 30 plus slates of different candidates from the PAP. And if some of these people get elected, one could potentially say that they are actually potentially part of a new 5G leadership. If you're looking forward down the road in the next 10 to 15 years, whereby we would be thinking of identifying someone to be the new Deputy Prime Minister, to potentially be the new 5G leader, to be the new Prime Minister, if the PAP forms the government in the future, then they will potentially come from this potential batch of candidates or the next one. So I don't think it's too much of a thing for the PB to bring in a lot of people at this point in time.
Okay. Well, we also want to bring up some other big names on the PAP front first who are absent for various reasons other than retirement. We saw some scandals the past couple of years. Former PAP MPs Tan Chuan Jin and Cheng Li Hui, plus former Minister of Transport S. Iswaran, of course. Any damage to overall party brand that was done here, you think?
Well, I'm quite heartened that to date, touch wood, up to this point, we haven't seen that being raised too often, even by the opposition, as a point of contention. I think one of the things I've always maintained is I hope to see, a election process, campaigning process that is based on respect, no personal attacks, and uplifting us from gutter politics, because I think the leaders of the country, they shouldn't just set an example when they're elected. They should set an example in the build up to the election as well. So there will be jokes, there will be snipes and stuff like that, but I think personal attacks and things like that are unnecessary. So it's great that we haven't really seen that being raised as a big issue. And to be honest, I think there's been enough exciting things to talk about from nomination day up to where we are now and even before, that I think these scandals potentially will have fallen a little bit by the wayside in terms of the public consciousness. I don't think people will forget it entirely, but will it matter when they go to the polling booths? I'm not entirely sure. And a part of it also depends on which demographic you're talking about, because the extramarital affairs versus the corruption versus the sort of hullabaloo over the rid-out bungalows mattered differently to different groups of people.
Right.
There wasn't a uniform sentiment across all demographics for each of these issues. And of course, then the opposition has had their challenges as well.
Exactly.
And,
Is that
again,
why they probably haven't made it a big deal? They also have Leon Pereira, Nicole Seah. So did they also leave a gap for the Workers' Party?
I think definitely when we enter the campaign, the rally season, I've seen so much speculation online about why certain candidates have raised certain issues that seem to have been drawing out their competition to make comments, and then people say, it's all part of the strategy, right? When they're talking about the abandoning of certain constituencies, then does it open the door for tit for tat kind of comments? So I think you're right. There is definitely the calculus that if we attack on this front, but we're also not 100% in the clear on this front ourselves, so maybe better don't.
What is your take, Elvin?
Yeah, I think most Singaporean voters know that no one is perfect, right? And no politicians are perfect. And they would have seen how the PAP has handled the different scandals, as you put it. And so they, for the PAP supporters, they will be, I guess, pretty satisfied with how the PAP would have handled it. For the opposition supporters, nothing the PAP would have done would have satisfied them. So the really the important demographic we should be thinking about is the moderate median voter, right? How do they think about these particular different scandals? And I think ultimately, from what the PAP has done so far, the moderate median voter can see very clearly, very transparently what has transpired. And they can also see what has happened on the Workers' Party side. And this will definitely play into their minds of the credibility, about the integrity of the different party brands. But at this moment in time, where we are already into the campaign season, I think these perceptions are really kind of baked into people's opinions. And people are just looking out for, okay, I already know what has happened so far. What else are you offering me in terms of policies, in terms of candidates?
Okay, so in your opinion, what are the pros and cons of having such a large number of incoming versus outgoing? Because I think for many people, it's the familiar and more experienced names that resonate with voters, right? So how do you strike that balance? What are the pros and cons of this?
Before we get to the personalities, right, I think one of the questions that really sticks out for me is, what do the Singapore voters of today want in their candidates? What is the ideal candidate to stand to become a member of parliament, to potentially be an office holder for us as Singaporeans? I ask myself that question too, because I come from a generation where I still remember the very strong narrative that if they're well educated, successful in their careers, if they're leaders in the civil service, if they're leaders in the military, or if they are high flying private sector guys, then they would be good ministers or even MPs. But I've also moved through a transition where I think a person's character is really important. And when you look at politics today, the person who can win people over, the person who can speak well, who is able to connect in a certain way, is kind of important too, right? Because you can't have a good guy who can't get himself elected. That usually will produce some kind of problems as well. But at the same time, I want somebody who is capable, somebody who understands the ground, the conditions in the constituency, who understands my needs at a national policy kind of level, and of course can represent Singapore on a global stage. So it sounds like they have to do it all, right?
Yeah.
And potentially even more than past generations. They have to be good at connecting on social media. They have to be able to understand how to navigate that without getting themselves into trouble, which so many politicians, not just in Singapore, around the world, seem to have trouble doing. So what are voters actually looking for today? I think we can see what the parties think that voters want. That's why the PAP, and to a certain extent we're describing some of the opposition parties sort of trending in that direction as well in terms of the candidates that they have. But what the voters want would really drive, I guess, and I hope, what the parties put forward in the future. So with younger people, more diversity, more women, I think in the PAP, that's one of the key things that they have raised. I would hope to see people who come from more diverse backgrounds. I think people can be great leaders regardless of whether they have a PhD or whether they went to Harvard or whatever, And I think that I hope we get to a stage where somebody who's really struggled, in life, who's gone through some tough times, but managed to bounce back. And I'm not just talking about the hashtag humble backgrounds that everybody talks about in their videos.
Yeah, I think having a lot of new faces for both the PAP as well as the opposition parties is definitely a lot of pros. Because when we have fresh new faces into the political arena, we're going to have more fresh ideas, we're going to have more fresh takes, right, and fresh perspectives that are more relevant to the current times in order to contribute in terms of legislative making, in terms of parliamentary debates. In terms of what Nicholas mentioned about what currently voters are looking for, right? I think everything that he mentioned still rings true today. They are looking for well-educated, well-credentialed people in their professional lives, but also people are looking not just at individual candidates now. I think they are also looking at a team, right?
Yeah.
And I think Minister Shanmugam, in presenting his Nee Soon team, made quite an interesting point in saying that, some of his team members in Nee Soon are going to be better in grassroots. Some of his team members are going to be potential political office holders. And everybody brings something different to the table. right? And I think when you look at the team in this manner, different people have different advantages and disadvantages, different skill sets, right, to bring to the table. And if we can look at a GRC in particular, right, as a team, I think that's another useful way of looking at how voters might potentially think about who to vote for.
Yeah, I think you brought up a great point. It's important to have new faces, new ideas, and we have seen some rising names, right, on the opposition bench, but as well as the PAP. Some promising new candidates that are getting a lot of excitement, and of course, the Workers' Party's Harpreet Singh definitely comes to mind, and he has really fired up the crowd since he stepped into the spotlight. Let's take a listen.
The Workers' Party is ready to lead that change. Punggol GRC voters, it is the privilege of a lifetime for Alexis, Alia, Jackson and I to step up and run in this election.
So, could he possibly be the star catch this election, Nick?
I think there have been many different media platforms who have already anointed him as the star catch. Again, it comes back to the question of what do you define as the star? What do you define as the desirable candidate? I think Harpreet, in many articles and profiles of him, we've seen some interesting things. He actually interviewed with the PAP and went quite far into the process of being considered as a candidate. Didn't ultimately get selected. Put himself forward to be a nominated member of parliament. Didn't get selected. And not saying that drove him to the opposition, but after a few years, he then decided that the Workers' Party would be the right place for him. Senior counsel, very established, very successful in his career. And I think he does tick a lot of the boxes of being an ideal candidate, and potentially, not someone that you would expect in the opposition, not just the Workers' Party. But I think the Workers' Party has been, of course, raising its own bar. But in the selection of its candidates, I feel, not to rehash the old PAP light kind of idea, but they are drifting very close to what you would think would be a prototypical PAP candidate as well. So at some point, again, I wonder, are all parties all going to sort of converge to the mean and, all will be fighting over these kind of talent? Because I have heard from all the different parties that they're really struggling with recruitment. It wouldn't be surprising if they were all tapping from the same talent pool, then of course you'll be struggling a little bit as well. So I think that's something that will be interesting to see in the future, how easy it'll be. It's already challenging to get people to stand, for elected office because of all the challenges and the scrutiny and the workload and stuff like that. But if all the parties are going to start tapping on the same, talent pool, wow, it's going to be tough.
Yeah, Elvin, what about you? What are the star catchers for you that you're watching this election?
I'm definitely going to look at different political parties in terms of let's just look at the opposition, right? So again, for Workers' Party, Harpreet is definitely up there. I think for the SDP in particular, one person that stands out is the very young candidate that they have, Arifin Shah. He is the founder of Wake Up Singapore, which is very active on social media platforms. And this time around, he has offered himself as a candidate for the SDP, competing in Marsiling UT GRC, no less, right? Right up against the Prime Minister. And he has had first time speech at a rally, if I'm not wrong, yesterday or 2 days ago, and which was fairly well received. Rattling off the PAP's manifesto from 1955, and I thought he's an articulate young man, and is definitely could be seen as potentially one of the star catchers for SDP.
Your thoughts on Arifin?
Yeah, I think I agree entirely with Elvin. He's very well spoken. He's pretty funny. He started out a little bit nervous, but obviously, who's not going to be nervous at your first rally speech as well? And he sort of built into it. Well spoken, bright. But I found it quite interesting that he criticized the PAP and sort of saying that we don't need TikTok ministers, right? And I guess alluding to the fact that so many politicians now feel that they have to engage on TikTok, but and other social media platforms. But he himself, as Elvin mentioned, through Wake Up Singapore, they are super active on the social and digital space. They are very savvy. Within minutes after he finished his speech, clips were already cut, captions, subtitles, all there and uploaded.
It's
and
immediate, yes.
Yeah, and it was all like the greatest hits of all the stuff from his rally as well. So obviously very media savvy. But then if you're criticizing TikTok ministers, then I guess all the parties now are finding ways to leverage on all these kind of platforms and technology to get their word out there. Not just getting it out there, but within minutes of the live thing, if you couldn't make it to the rally, you're going to get it in social media feed. So that's pretty impressive.
Yeah, so we have another name to bring up now, Alexis Dang. So Harpreet is now leading the slate for WP's all-newbie team, right, at Punggol GRC. Definitely one of the races to watch this election. And there's a buzz around Alexis Dang, who is gaining a lot of appeal online. How do you see this battle playing out at Punggol GRC, especially in such a young and dynamic town? And they're going right up against DPM Gan Kim Yong.
I think Alexis has strong appeal to a lot of female voters in Punggol. I think for across the WP slate, what you have very clear, and also for the PAP slate, is for in every group representative constituency, you're going to have at least one female candidate. And that female candidate must be impressive, and they should appeal to the ladies, right, within the constituency. I think Alexis is doing a good job for the Workers' Party in Punggol. And of course, not to forget, Alia is also a part of the Punggol team, as well as Jackson is also a part of the Punggol team. I think Jackson also seem to do fairly well in his first rally a couple of days ago. So I think the Workers' Party has a pretty strong team in Punggol.
All right. Well, before I let you both go, I'll have to put you on the spot here. Looking at the caliber of the candidates that we talked about, that the parties introduced, we know it's still in the early days, but which party, in your view, has made the stronger impression? If you had to give a scale of 1 to 10, Workers' Party, PAP, or any other opposition, what would you say, Nick?
I think fundamentally, structurally, it's much easier for the opposition to make a strong impression because they're not the incumbent. The incumbent has the incumbent's curse. They have been running the show for a while. It's much harder to make any sort of attacks. It's much easier to throw stones if you're outside of the space. So I think in terms of orators, in terms of people who speak well, who tell funny stories, who command an audience, it's pretty even, but I'll give the opposition a slight edge. There have been some faux pas as well. There have been some singing that I recall.
Not a singing fan, Nick?
Good singing, yes. The kind of singing we've been hearing, not so much. But they make an impression, and everybody from my mom to my colleagues say, like, hey, did you hear this guy?
But isn't that what's important, to make an impression?
Especially from the smaller parties, you don't command the kind of reach or audience yet. That could be one way to do it. I don't know if that's the best way to do it, but it's one way to do it. But as you say, we've got a few more days to go. We're seeing tons of rallies coming out, which is, I guess, reflects the pent-up demand. We hadn't had physical rallies for 10 years. So I think there's still a lot of the race to be run in terms of getting awareness and building the brand for the candidates and their parties.
Yeah, well, Elvin, I'm not letting you off the hook. The question goes to you too.
Well, in terms of improvement, I think both the PAP and the Workers' Party have made significant improvements in the kind of new refreshing faces they have put forward. I think that's really very good. For the rest of the opposition parties, PSP, SDP, still a few old faces hanging around. As we mentioned, the new face for SDP is Arifin. So I think that if you were to give the so-called most new faces, right, most refreshed grade for the different political parties, I would say the PAP and Workers' Party are kind of neck and neck.
All right. Well, with so many fresh faces and long-standing names also stepping aside, GE2025 is shaping up to be an election to watch. That was Elvin Ong, Assistant Professor of Political Science at the National University of Singapore, and Nicholas Fang, Managing Director of Strategic Consultancy Black Dot and former NMP. Gentlemen, it was such a pleasure. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Now let's turn to what's going on the digital front. Your social media update starts very soon.
As Singapore heads to the polls, Money FM 89.3 brings you front row access to GE 2025 with insights from experts and analysis of the issues that matter to you. Stay ahead with Money FM 89.3.
All right, it's time to venture into the digital space, the other battleground this GE. And here to break it down for us, Thekla Lee, our GE producer and resident Gen Zer on the team, will be telling us what's gaining traction online. Thekla, how are you doing?
Hello. Well, for the social media wrap today, we're staying on theme for our coverage of new faces and farewells in GE 2025. Now, when it comes to retirements, one moment had the internet buzzing, and it came from Nee-Soon GRC's Louis Ng.
Oh, yeah, we've all seen that video, I think.
Well, during an emotional speech announcing his stepping down, Louis actually broke into tears while thanking residents. It was a very heartfelt scene, and in a real moment of friendship, Minister Shanmugam actually wiped Louis's tears for him. And we have that video for our viewers. Let's take a look.
To the residents in Nee-Soon East, thank you. It has been an incredible privilege serving as your MP and walking this journey together with you. Thank you for your trust, for letting me into your lives, and for making this our home with a heart. This privilege, this trust is something that I have never taken lightly. And for that, I thank you.
Now, Audrey, I have to say I completely empathize with him. I'm someone who cries super easily when I feel deep gratitude or when a chapter of my life closes. And while this was a moving moment, unfortunately, it was also very memeable. Netizens quickly turned that tear-wiping moment into a whole movement, using it to describe everything from surviving Monday mornings to breakup support.
Oh my gosh. Well, first of all, I have to say that I would love to be your Shanmugam. I'll wipe your tears whenever you cry. But yeah, we need to talk about Louis Ng. He's someone who's been widely recognized as an active, very well-liked MP. And yeah, he got pretty emotional when he announced his decision to step away. But I think many people were also emotional about that, right?
Yeah, definitely. So there were actually a few photos online where someone edited the photo to have his own cute spin on it to thank Louis Ng in their own way.
Oh, wow.
And all the Gen Zs were making edits of it as well, so that he definitely has an online presence where people feel that he will be missed. Well, now another big name that's stepping away this GE is obviously Heng Swee Keat. The DPM announced that he won't be contesting, and honestly, it sparked a lot of nostalgic reactions online.
Oh, like what?
So, well, of course, everybody remembers that famous East Coast plan moment from the last election.
Oh, yes.
Well, one comment on DPM Heng's Facebook post announcing his retirement totally stole the show. It's from Singaporean comedian Rishi Butrani, where he said, quote, "Y'all keep talking about East Coast plans until he got tired and made a retirement plan instead." So how do you feel about that?
I mean, I feel like, DPM Heng really kept us all on our toes. If you remember, there was a lot of speculation already prior to this, leading up to nomination day, whether he was going to be running or not. And then he was spotted at the nomination center, and I did see people say, oh, I wonder where he's going to run. Is he going to go back to, and everyone was wondering maybe he isn't retiring. And yes, he's been around since 2011, one of the ministers leading the charge for COVID. So this big chapter is closed. I think that people are still coming to terms with that, probably.
But I think we have to remember, DPM Heng has given a lot to the country. We remember his big health scare some years ago. It was pretty serious, and he came back and he still, served for a good number of years. So I think certainly it will be fair to wish him a happy retirement and to enjoy his life from now on. I just like to highlight. I think the quote of the day has got to be, "I wish I could be your Shanmugam." I don't think I've ever heard anybody ever say that before. But cool, that's definitely quote of the day.
Look, I'm about to start singing, Nick. So
Audrey's the best Shanmugam I could possibly ask for. Well, now switching gears, let's take a look at a newcomer this time. We're zooming in on someone that we've been talking about the entire night, the youngest candidate of this election, Arifin Shah from the SDP. He is better known as the founder of the alternative news site, Wake Up Singapore, obviously. And Arifin recently posted an Instagram reel where he messes up his speech at a rally but totally laughs it off. Let's have a look.
I am 27 years old, 28 this year.
பேசாம கோயிலுக்குள்ளேயே மணி அடிச்சுக்கிட்டு இருக்கலாம் புண்ணியமாவது கிடைச்சிருக்கும் அரசாங்க உத்தியோகத்துக்கு ஆசைப்பட்டு இங்க வந்து தெரு தெருவா வீதி வீதியா குல்பி ஐஸ்கார மாதிரி மணி அடிச்சுக்கிட்டு இருக்கு.
Okay, I turned 28 this year.
Well, in that video, he actually splices a bit of a movie that's in Tamil, and the quote that plays actually says, "I could have been ringing bells in a temple, but instead I chose to go into politics."
Okay, so first of all, I want to say I forget my age all the time. I don't know if that's because I'm just losing track, showing my age, but I think that this is actually a pretty funny and humanizing moment, right?
Yeah, no, Arifin totally brings in a different energy using humor and social media tactics to stay relatable to the everyday Singaporean. Now, Nick, when you were on the show yesterday, you mentioned that we're entering an era of TikTok candidates and soundbite politicians. So what's your take on Arifin's approach? Are we liking it or do we have some notes?
No, so I think it's as you guys say, and I had the same reaction. I watched that segment of his speech in its entirety without the splicing and the humorous editing that he did later on, and I thought, wow, if he really made a mistake, that's a great recovery. If he inserted it there as a bit of humor to lighten the mood, that's also genius, because people go to rally speeches and they expect the fiery banging and stuff like that. But if you can weave in humor, especially self-deprecating humor, you lighten the mood, everybody kind of laughs and everybody sort of wakes up and go like, oh, wow, this guy's, it's not just one track, and you keep the audience engaged. And that's something that the traditional, what we would assume the traditional politician that we see in Singapore, few and far between that we have seen this, whether it's in parliament, in regular speeches, and certainly not in rallies. Again, that's why people like to go to opposition rallies, because entertainment value is much higher. But does this then make a good candidate to be an MP or to be a leader of the country? I don't know. I think it's certainly entertaining, but it remains to be seen how people judge, and hopefully we don't just judge it on the quality of the jokes.
What do you think, Elvin?
Yeah, I think it's very interesting that he's able to mix it up. For far too long, I think a lot of politicians have been on like a one-way track, right? And so, the fact that he's able to mix it up, to be serious when it's needed, to have substance when it's needed to be, and to be to have self-deprecating humor when it's needed to be. I think it shows his intellect, actually, to be able to mix it up so much. So definitely a very impressive young candidate, and we'll see how far that takes him.
Okay, well, as we say hello to new faces and goodbye to familiar ones, it's clear in 2025, politics isn't just about policies and speeches anymore. It's about authenticity, humor, and connecting with the next generation of voters too. Back to you, Audrey.
Yeah, there's so many new faces to watch this year. It's really, really exciting, and it's gearing up. I can't believe 1 week to polling day. That was Thekla Lee, our GE producer, with the lowdown on social media as we focused on the push for renewal and missing ministers this GE. Thank you, Thekla.
No worries.
All right, so before we wrap up, we have a quick update. Authorities have directed Facebook to block access to several posts by Malaysian politicians and others who attempted to interfere in GE 2025 by showing support for Muslim candidates who had spoken up on sensitive Islamic issues. The Ministry of Home Affairs and Elections Department stressed that Singapore's politics must be decided by Singaporeans alone, warned against attempts to stir division along racial or religious lines. Certainly a hot button issue, one that we'll be monitoring very closely, and one that we'll be discussing on tomorrow's show in the company of Dr. Mustafa Izzuddin, fellow and adjunct senior lecturer at the National University of Singapore, and Dr. Ruben Ong comes back, assistant professor at the Lee Kuan Yew School of Public Policy. So be sure to come back tomorrow with Michelle Martin at 7 p.m. on Sunday. And that's all the time we have on GE Tonight, but the conversation, as always, continues online. Don't forget to follow Money FM on Instagram, YouTube, LinkedIn, and I'm forgetting something, Facebook. That's right. I'm Audrey Seek, and on behalf of the GE Tonight team, we wish you a great evening.
Tune in to GE Tonight at 7 p.m. every night on Money FM 89.3 for all the latest news and developments as Singapore prepares to head to the polls.